The California sun had barely cracked the horizon when Elena Cross pulled her truck into the gravel parking lot of the Naval Special Operations Training Center. The air smelled like diesel fuel and possibility. She killed the engine and sat for a moment, hands still gripping the wheel, staring at the cluster of buildings that would either make or break the next chapter of her life. 28 years old, 3 combat deployments, a silver star gathering dust in a drawer somewhere back home. And here she was reporting for duty as an instructor, trying to prove she could teach instead of just fight. The irony wasn't lost on her. Elena grabbed her duffel from the truck bed and slung it over her shoulder. The weight felt familiar, comforting even. She'd carried heavier loads through worse places. Helmand Province, Mosul. The Syrian border at 3 in the morning with 6 Marines depending on her to get them home. She'd gotten them home. But command still questioned whether she'd gotten lucky, whether her methods were sound or just reckless gambling that happened to pay off. This assignment was their way of finding out. Prove you can teach the next generation of warriors or spend the rest of your career pushing papers at a desk in Norfolk. Not much of a choice, really. The admin building loomed ahead, and its windows catching the early light like a row of unblinking eyes. Elena pushed through the double doors and found herself in a corridor that smelled like floor wax and old coffee. A young sailor behind a desk looked up, took in her crisp fatigues and the intensity in her eyes, and immediately straightened. "Ma'am, can I help you?" Petty Officer First Class Elena Cross, reporting as ordered. The sailor's fingers flew across his keyboard. "Yes, ma'am. Master Chief Thornton is expecting you. Second floor office, 214. Elena took the stairs 2 at a time. Her boots echoed at the stairwell, a steady rhythm that matched her heartbeat. Second floor, long corridor. Office 214 had a brass nameplate that read, Master Chief William Thornton. She knocked twice. "Enter." The voice was gravelly, weathered by decades of shouting orders and breathing in gunpowder. Elena opened the door and stepped into an office that looked like a military museum had exploded. Unit plaques covered one wall. Photos of warriors in various desert and jungle environments lined another. Behind the desk sat a man who looked like he'd been carved from granite and left out in the elements to age. Master Chief William Thornton was 62 years old, but he carried those years like battle scars, proof of survival, not decline. His hair was close-cropped and silver. His eyes were the color of storm clouds. When he stood, Elena saw the lean, coiled build of someone who'd never stopped training even after 4 decades in uniform. Petty Officer Cross. He didn't offer his hand, just studied her like she was a tactical problem waiting to be solved. "You look like your father." Elena kept her face neutral. "So I've been told, Master Chief." "I served with Captain James Cross in Grenada, October 1983. Rescue operation that went sideways faster than you can say clusterfuck. He pulled me out of a kill zone, took shrapnel doing him it, 3 pieces still in his shoulder when they shipped him stateside." He never talked much about Grenada, Master Chief. Good men rarely talk about their worst days. Thornton moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back. "Before your father died, he made me promise something. If Elena ever needs guidance, give it to her straight. No sugarcoating, no politics. Just the truth." Elena felt something tighten in her chest. Her father had died 6 years ago. Heart attack at 53, probably brought on by 30 years of stress and too many close calls. She'd been in Afghanistan when it happened. Missed the funeral by 3 days. "I appreciate that, Master Chief. Don't appreciate it yet. Haven't heard what I have to say." Thornton turned from the window. "You're here because command thinks you might have what it takes to shape the next generation of operators. Or they think you need to be kept busy with something that won't get anyone killed if you screw up. Hard to tell which. With respect, Master Chief, I'm not finished." His voice dropped to a register that made junior officers nervous. "This program is on life support. Budget cuts, political pressure, Special Operations Command questioning whether we're producing results that justify the cost. We've got 8 weeks to prove this training cycle produces exceptional warriors, or they pull funding and reassign everyone to other duties." Elena felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders. 8 weeks. 8 weeks. You're our Hail Mary Cross, a decorated combat veteran, a woman who's proven herself in the ugliest fights of the past decade. If you can take a group of raw recruits and turn them into something Special Operations Command can't ignore, we survive. If you can't, he left the rest unsaid. Understood, Master Chief. I hope so. Thornton moved back to his desk, pulled out a file folder. Your training group is 24 recruits, ages 18 to 25. Mix of prior service and straight civilian. They've completed basic. They've passed initial physical standards. And they think they're hot shit. Standard recruits, then. The ghost of a smile crossed Thornton's face. Some of them more standard than others. You'll meet them soon enough. First day starts with lunch in the mess hall. Get settled in your quarters. Be visible. Let them see you. Elena took the folder. Inside were photographs and basic files on 24 young faces staring at the camera with varying degrees of confidence and bravado. One more thing, Cross. Thornton's voice softened just slightly. Your father would be proud of you, not because you're here, but because you never quit when everyone told you to. Elena met his eyes. Thank you, Master Chief. Dismissed. She found her quarters in a 2-story barracks that housed instructors and senior staff. Small room, single bed, metal locker, window overlooking the obstacle course where generations of warriors had learned to push past their limits. It would do. Elena unpacked with military efficiency, uniforms hung in the locker, boots lined up beneath, personal items minimal, a photo of her father in his dress uniform, a worn copy of Marcus Aurelius that had survived 3 deployments, a challenge coin from her SEAL team with the inscription, "Never quit," on one side. She changed into fresh fatigues, checked her appearance in the small mirror mounted to the locker door. Dark hair pulled back in a tight regulation bun. No makeup, no jewelry. Just a warrior preparing for another kind of battle. 1,100 hours. Time to make herself visible. The mess hall was a massive space designed to feed hundreds of personnel across multiple shifts. Long tables arranged in neat rows. Industrial kitchen visible through serving windows. The smell of institutional cooking, not quite good, not quite bad, just familiar. Elena grabbed a tray and moved through the line. Grilled chicken, steamed vegetables, rice, water bottle. She paid no attention to the look she was getting. Years of being the only woman in rooms full of men had taught her to recognize stares without acknowledging them. She chose a table near the back corner. Strategic positioning, back to the wall, clear sight lines to all entrances, old habits from combat zones that never quite went away. The food was exactly as expected. Elena ate methodically, not rushing, thinking about the training cycle ahead. 8 weeks to prove herself. 8 weeks to save a program. 8 weeks to show that she could do more than just survive firefights. She could create warriors who would survive their own. Hey, check it out. The voice came from a nearby table. Male, young, carrying the kind of swagger that came from being bigger and stronger than most people you'd ever met. Elena didn't look up, kept eating. I'm serious, man. Look at her. More voices joining in. A low rumble of conversation that suddenly had a focus, a target. Elena set down her fork with deliberate precision, took a sip of water, still didn't look. 4 figures appeared in her peripheral vision, moving together, confidence in their stride. They positioned themselves around her table in a loose semicircle, cutting off her easy exit paths. Amateur intimidation tactics. Textbook bullying behavior. Elena looked up. The one in front was everything she'd expected. Early 20s, blonde hair cut high and tight. 6'2", maybe 220. The build of someone who'd spent years in weight rooms and on football fields. His uniform was crisp, his posture aggressive, blue eyes that probably got him out of trouble more often than into it. Excuse me, ma'am. His voice was polite on the surface, condescending underneath. I think you might be in the wrong place. The women's admin building is in Sector C, easy mistake to make. The 3 with him formed a tighter semicircle. One was dark-haired, compact, with the thick neck and shoulder development of a wrestler. Another was tall and lanky, trying too hard to match the leader's confidence. The 4th was youngest, maybe 19, just going along with whatever the group decided. Elena took another sip of water, set the bottle down with controlled precision. Her voice when she spoke was quiet, conversational, carrying no heat or anger. I'm exactly where I need to be. The blonde one, the obvious leader, exchanged glances with his friends. This wasn't going according to script. She was supposed to be flustered, embarrassed, eager to escape. Look, he said, leaning forward slightly, using his size to loom over the table. I don't think you understand what this place is. This is special operations training. This mess hall is for operators, people who are here for the real work. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. The wrestler built one step closer. No offense, but maybe you'd be more comfortable somewhere else. We're just trying to help you out. Lena pushed her tray away and stood up slowly. The movement was fluid controlled, carrying a grace that didn't match her 5'8" frame, with the threat these four clearly thought they posed. The blonde one didn't step back. Probably should have. Ma'am, come on. The wrestler reached out his hand, coming toward her shoulder. Let me walk you to the right building. His hand was 6 inches from contact when Elena moved. What happened next took 45 seconds, though, to the 200 people watching in the mess hall. It seemed to happen all at once. Elena's left hand intercepted the wrestler's reaching arm. Her fingers found the pressure point at his wrist with surgical precision, a nerve cluster that, when pressed correctly, sent signals to the brain that the hand was no longer receiving commands. His hand went numb instantly. She rotated his arm inward, using his own momentum against him, and stepped inside his guard in the same motion. Her right hand came up not a punch, but an open palm strike to his solar plexus. Controlled force, enough to knock the wind out of him but not cause serious damage. As he gasped and bent forward instinctively, Elena swept his legs with her right foot while maintaining control of his arm. He went down hard. His back hit the linoleum with a sound that echoed through the suddenly silent mess hall. 5 seconds. The blonde leader lunged forward, probably acting on instinct more than tactics. Elena had already shifted her weight, was already moving. She used his forward momentum, stepped to the outside of his lunge, and executed a perfect hip throw. His own mass worked against him. He went over her hip and crashed into the table she'd been eating at. 12 seconds. The lanky one tried to grab her from behind. Panic move. Desperation. Elena felt his arms coming, sensed the angle of approach, and delivered a sharp reverse elbow to his ribs. Not full force, just enough to make his body understand this was a bad idea. Then she hooked his leg with hers and sent him stumbling backward. 28 seconds. The youngest one, the follower, made a half-hearted attempt to help his friend. Elena swept both their legs in a single fluid motion. They went down in a tangle of limbs, neither seriously hurt, but both thoroughly disoriented. 38 seconds. Elena stood in the center of the chaos. 4 recruits on the ground around her in a rough circle. She wasn't breathing hard, wasn't sweating. Her uniform hadn't even wrinkled. The entire mess hall had gone silent. 200 voices cut off mid-sentence, forks frozen halfway to mouths, coffee cups suspended in midair. Elena looked down at the 4 recruits. The blonde leader was pushing himself up on his elbows, his face a mixture of shock and rage. The wrestler was still gasping for air. The other 2 were simply staring their brains, trying to process what had just happened. Never surround someone, Elena said quietly, unless you are absolutely certain you can handle them. She paused, let the words settle. Class dismissed. The silence held for another heartbeat. Then movement at the far entrance drew every eye in the room. Attention! The voice cut through the air like a blade. Every person in the mess hall snapped to their feet instantly. Back straight, eyes forward, hands at sides, igamaus. The 4 recruits on the floor scrambled up as fast as their battered bodies would allow. Master Chief William Thornton walked through the entrance with the unhurried purpose of someone who had been giving orders since before most of these recruits were born. He wore his uniform like a second skin, every crease perfect, every detail exact. His eyes swept the room, taking in the scene with decades of experience reading situations. He walked straight to Elena's position. The 4 recruits stood rigid, faces pale, trying very hard to appear anywhere but where they were. Thornton stopped beside Elena. She stood at attention, eyes fixed on a point over his shoulder. The Master Chief looked at the 4 recruits, looked at the overturned table, looked at the way the entire mess hall was holding its collective breath. Then he turned to face the room. Do any of you know who this is? Silence. The blonde recruit opened his mouth, closed it again. The wrestler stared at his boots. The other 2 looked like they wanted the floor to swallow them. Thornton's voice filled the space with command authority. This is Petty Officer First Class Elena Cross, United States Navy SEAL. The weight of those 4 words, United States Navy SEAL, hit the room like a physical force. 3 combat deployments, Thornton continued. Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria. Silver Star for Valor Under Fire. Bronze Star with V device for heroic achievement in combat operations. He let that information sink in, watched the faces of the recruits as they processed what he was saying. Last year, Petty Officer Cross conducted a solo extraction of 6 United States Marines from a Taliban ambush in Helmand Province. The Marines were pinned down, taking casualties. Air support was 30 minutes out. She went in alone. Thornton's voice never rose, never added drama. He was just stating facts. That made them more powerful. She neutralized 17 hostile combatants with precision rifle fire from elevated positions. Then she went into the kill zone on foot, provided combat trauma care to 3 wounded Marines under continuous enemy fire, organized the defense perimeter, held that position for 27 minutes until extraction birds arrived. The mess hall had moved beyond silence into something deeper. Reverence, maybe, or the recognition that they were in the presence of someone who'd done things most of them had only imagined. 6 Marines went home to their families because of her actions that day. 6 men who are alive right now because Petty Officer Cross has the skill, the courage, and the tactical brilliance to do what others couldn't. Thornton turned to look at Elena briefly, then back to the room. She's trained with British Special Air Service in Hereford, with Israeli Sayeret Matkal in the Negev, with Polish Grom in the Baltic. She holds expert ratings in demolitions, advanced trauma medicine, high-altitude operations, and maritime infiltration. He paused. Let the credentials stack up in their minds. In direct combat operations across 3 deployments, she has 47 confirmed hostile eliminations, 47 enemy combatants who are no longer a threat to American forces or American interest. Finally, Thornton turned his attention to the 4 recruits still standing at rigid attention. And you 4 just tried to intimidate her in my mess hall. The blonde recruit's face had gone from pale to bright red. The wrestler looked like he might be sick. The other 2 couldn't meet Thornton's eyes. What's your name, recruit? Rawlings, Master Chief. Garrett Rawlings. Rawlings, let me tell you something about the Naval Special Operations community. We don't care if you were a football star. We don't care if you were prom king. We don't care if your daddy was a general or your mama was a senator. Thornton stepped closer to Garrett. What we care about is whether you can do the job, whether you can be trusted when lives are on the line, whether you have the discipline, the intelligence, and the character to earn the trident. He gestured to Elena without looking at her. Petty Officer Cross earned her trident. She proved herself in the crucible of actual combat. She has bled for her country and her teammates. She has earned every single ounce of respect that uniform commands. Thornton's voice dropped to a tone that somehow felt more dangerous than if he'd been shouting. What have you earned, Rawlings? Garrett's voice was barely above a whisper. Nothing, Master Chief. Louder. Nothing, Master Chief. That's correct. You've earned nothing. Your recruits, you're barely qualified to carry her equipment, much less question her presence in this facility. Thornton looked at the wrestler. You. Name? Pierce, Master Chief. Donovan Pierce. How's your chest feel, Pierce? Sore, Master Chief. Good. Consider yourself lucky. She pulled that strike. If Petty Officer Cross had followed through with full force, you'd be in the medical bay with cracked ribs and maybe a punctured lung. Be grateful she showed you mercy you didn't deserve. Thornton turned back to address the entire mess hall. Let this be a lesson to all of you. The military is not your high school cafeteria. This is not a place for ego or prejudice or outdated assumptions about who belongs where. This is a place where competence matters, where character matters, where the only color that counts is the color of the flag on your shoulder. His voice rose slightly, carrying to every corner of the room. If you have a problem serving alongside someone who has proven themselves in combat, then you don't belong here. If you have a problem learning from someone who has forgotten more about warfare than you'll ever know, then you don't belong here. If you think physical intimidation is an acceptable way to deal with people you don't understand, then you sure as hell don't belong here. He let that hang in the air. Is that understood? The response was immediate and unified. Yes, Master Chief. Thornton looked at Elena for the first time since he'd started speaking. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. Petty Officer Cross, these 4 recruits are hereby assigned to your training group for the next 8 weeks. You will break them down. You will build them back up. You will show them what a warrior looks like." Elena's voice was steady. "I, Master Chief? The rest of you—" "Oh." Thornton's gaze swept the room one final time. "Training begins at 05:30 tomorrow morning. Petty Officer Cross will be one of your primary instructors. What she says is law. How she demonstrates is your standard. If you have questions, ask them respectfully. If you have doubts, keep them to yourself and prove them wrong through performance." He turned on his heel and walked out. His exit was as controlled and purposeful as his entrance. The moment the doors closed behind him, sound began to return to the mess hall. Quiet at first, whispers, then gradually building back to something approaching normal conversation. Elena looked at the four recruits still standing at attention. At ease. They relaxed marginally. Garrett Rawlings met her eyes for the first time, and she saw something there beyond the earlier arrogance. Shock, yes. Embarrassment, absolutely. But also something else. Calculation, maybe. Or the first stirrings of respect born from having your assumptions shattered. "Tomorrow morning," Elena said quietly, keeping her voice low enough that only they could hear. "Oh, 5:30, training facility main building. Don't be late." She turned and walked out of the mess hall. Behind her, she heard the conversations resume in full. Speculation, analysis, the story of what had just happened being retold and reshaped by each person who witnessed it. Elena stepped out into the California sunshine and took a deep breath. Her hands were steady. Her heartbeat was normal. The 45 seconds in the mess hall hadn't been a fight. It had been a lesson. Whether they learned from it remained to be seen. She walked back to her quarters, aware that everything had changed. Tomorrow morning she'd face those recruits again. But now they'd know. Now they'd understand that the woman standing in front of them wasn't there because of politics or quotas or social experiments. She was there because she'd earned it, in the worst places, under the worst circumstances, with the highest stakes. Elena reached her quarters and sat on the edge of the bed, pulled out her phone. No messages, no missed calls. Just the background image of her father in his dress uniform taken 2 months before Grenada, before the shrapnel, before the decades of service that would eventually stop his heart too early. She wondered what he'd think of today. The mess hall, the 4 recruits, the way their certainty had crumbled in 45 seconds. He'd probably laugh. Then he'd tell her the hard part was just beginning, because breaking down arrogance was easy. Building up warriors was something else entirely. Elena set the phone aside and lay back on the narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow would come early. Tomorrow she'd stand in front of 24 recruits and begin the process of turning raw potential into something Special Operations Command couldn't ignore. 8 weeks. 45 seconds had changed the dynamic. The next 8 weeks would show whether she could sustain it. Outside, the sun climbed higher, burning off the morning haze. Somewhere on the base, Garrett Rawlings and his 3 friends were probably still processing what had happened, still trying to reconcile the woman they'd assumed they understood with the warrior who'd put them on the floor without breaking a sweat. That was good. Confusion was the first step toward learning. Elena closed her eyes. Thought about Marcus Holloway, her spotter, the man who'd taken a bullet meant for her in a Syrian city whose name was still classified. Thought about the 6 Marines she'd pulled out of Helmand Province. Thought about her father and the promise Master Chief Thornton had made to him. If Elena ever needs guidance, give it to her straight. She'd gotten guidance. Now she had a mission. Transform 24 recruits into warriors worthy of the Trident. Save a program on the verge of extinction. Prove that she could teach as well as she fought. No pressure. Elena smiled despite herself. Pressure was nothing new. Pressure was just another form of weight. And she'd been carrying heavy loads through hostile territory for years. This would be no different. Tomorrow, 05:30, the real work began. The morning arrived with the kind of darkness that military bases seem to specialize in. Elena was awake at 0400, her internal clock calibrated by years of pre-dawn operations and emergency deployments. She went through her routine with practiced efficiency. 5-mile run at a pace that would make most recruits question their life choices. Calisthenics, stretching, shower, uniform inspection in the small mirror. By 05:15, she was standing outside the main training facility, watching the first recruits arrive through the gloom. They came in clusters, some still rubbing sleep from their eyes, others already vibrating with nervous energy. The door behind her opened. Master Chief Thornton stepped out, coffee in hand, his uniform already immaculate despite the early hour. Sleep well, Cross. Well enough, Master Chief. Good, you're going to need it. He took a sip of coffee, studied the arriving recruits. 24 of them. Half will wash out before week 4. Another quarter will quit during the field exercise. If you're lucky, you'll graduate 6 worth a damn. Respectfully, Master Chief, I plan to graduate all 24. Thornton's eyes cut to her measuring. Then he smiled. Just slightly. Your father said something similar in Grenada. Right before the operation went sideways and he had to improvise his way out of a kill zone. He paused. He graduated everyone too. That's why I requested you. By 05:30, all 24 recruits stood assembled in the training area. Lena recognized the 4 from yesterday: Garrett Rawlings, Donovan Pierce, the lanky one she now knew as Hawkins Webb, and the youngest follower, Foster Maddox. They stood together, but something had changed in their body language. Less swagger, more wariness. The rest of the group was a mix of builds and backgrounds. A woman near the back stood out immediately, tall, athletic, with the lean muscle development of a serious runner. Several others had the thick builds of former football players or wrestlers. A few looked like they'd walked straight out of civilian life and weren't quite sure what they'd signed up for. Elena stepped to the front. 24 pairs of eyes locked onto her. Good morning. I'm Petty Officer First Class Elena Cross. For the next 8 weeks, I will be one of your primary instructors. By now, some of you have heard what happened yesterday in the mess hall. For those who haven't, here's the summary version. 4 recruits made assumptions. Those assumptions were corrected. We move forward. She let that settle. I don't care about your background. I don't care if you're male or female. I don't care if you're 6'5" or 5'2". What I care about is whether you can complete the mission, whether you can be trusted by your teammates, whether you have the mental toughness to push through when everything hurts and every voice in your head is screaming at you to quit. Elena began walking along the line of recruits, making eye contact with each one. This program has one purpose: to identify who has the foundation to become a special operations warrior. Not to make you comfortable, not to validate your self-image, to break you down and see what's underneath. Some of you will discover you're stronger than you thought. Others will discover you're not ready. Both are valuable lessons. She stopped in front of Garrett Rawlings. He met her eyes, his jaw tight. Today we start with the obstacle course. I'm going to demonstrate it first. Show you what right looks like. Then you're going to attempt it. Your times will be recorded. Your form will be evaluated. Questions. A hand went up near the back. The tall female recruit. Ma'am, what's the course record? Elena allowed herself a slight smile. 4 minutes, 18 seconds. Set in 95 by a legendary instructor. Master Chief Thornton came close once with 4:20. Thornton, standing off to the side, gave a small nod of acknowledgement. Any other questions? Silence. Good. Follow me. The obstacle course sprawled across 200 meters of California dirt and determination. Elena led the group to the starting line where decades of boots had worn the ground smooth. The course began with an 8-foot wall, raw wood planks that offered minimal handholds. Beyond that, a tire run, dozens of rubber tires half buried in the ground, forcing runners to maintain quick feet and constant balance. Then the rope climb, a 15-foot vertical challenge with a bell at the top. The barbed wire crawl came next, 30 meters of mud and sharp edges strung 18 inches above the deck. After that, a balance beam suspended 4 feet off the ground, 8 inches wide, 20 feet long. The over-under barriers required climbing, sliding, and crawling in rapid succession. Finally, a 50-meter sprint to the finish line. 200 meters that had broken stronger candidates than these recruits would ever know. Elena positioned herself at the starting line, rolled her shoulders once, shook out her legs. The recruits gathered along the sides, watching with varying degrees of skepticism and curiosity. Master Chief Thornton stood with a stopwatch, his face impassive. On your mark, Petty Officer. Elena settled into her stance. Weight forward, breathing controlled. 3, 2, 1, go. She exploded forward. The 8-foot wall came up fast. Elena hit it at speed, her right foot finding purchase on the rough wood, her hands grabbing the top edge. Arms and legs working together, not fighting each other. She was over in 2.8 seconds, landing in a controlled roll that bled off momentum and kept her moving. The tire run required precision footwork. Elena's feet danced through the pattern, each step finding the center of a tire, never breaking rhythm. Her breathing stayed steady, her core engaged, maintaining balance through constant micro-adjustments. The rope climb loomed ahead, 15 feet of thick manila that had defeated countless recruits who tried to muscle their way up. Elena grabbed it and executed the technique that years of practice had made second nature. Legs wrapped around the rope in a figure-4 lock, using leg power to push upward while her hands maintained grip and balance. The rope was her tool, not her enemy. 7 seconds to the top. She slapped the bell, descended in controlled slides, hit the ground running. The barbed wire crawl was where technique separated from pure grit. Elena went flat, elbows and knees, driving her forward body staying low. The wire scraped her back once, a light touch that didn't break skin. The mud was cold and sucked at her uniform, but she maintained forward momentum. 22 seconds through the section that made most recruits want to stand up and take their chances with the wire. The balance beam required a different kind of focus. Elena stepped onto it without hesitation, arms out for stability, eyes focused on the far end. Halfway across, she executed a smooth turn, demonstrating technique, not just speed, then continued forward. Off the end, with a small hop, already transitioning to the next obstacle. The over-under barriers were a test of full-body coordination. Climb over the first barrier, slide under the second, crawl through the third. Elena flowed through them like water finding paths through rock. No wasted movement, no hesitation, every action purposeful. Then the final sprint, 50 meters of open ground. Elena's legs pumped, driving hard, arms swinging in rhythm. The finish line approached. She crossed it with controlled power, not gasping, not staggering. Master Chief Thornton clicked the stopwatch, looked at the time. His eyebrows rose fractionally. 3 minutes, 52 seconds. The number hung in the air like a challenge. New course record, Petty Officer, by 26 seconds. Elena walked in small circles, bringing her heart rate down, controlling her breathing. She wasn't significantly winded. Years of training had built her endurance to levels most people couldn't comprehend. The recruits stared, their faces showing various stages of shock and calculation. Thornton turned to address them. That's the standard. That's what right looks like. Notice the technique. Notice how she used her legs, not just her arms. Notice how she never stopped moving, never broke momentum. Speed comes from efficiency, not desperation. He gestured to the starting line. First group of 6, line up. Garrett Rawlings stepped forward immediately. So did Donovan Pierce. The tall female recruit joined them along with Hawkins, Webb, Foster, Maddox, and a stocky recruit with the build of a powerlifter. Thornton raised the stopwatch. On my mark, 3, 2, 1, go. 6 recruits exploded forward with varying degrees of success. Garrett hit the wall hard, trying to power his way over. He made it, but the technique was rough, wasting energy. Donovan used better form, clearing the wall in reasonable time. The female recruit attacked it with determination, her strong legs driving upward over the top in 4 seconds flat. The tire run separated them further. Garrett's bulk worked against him, his feet heavier than they needed to be. The female recruit excelled here, her track background evident in the quick, precise footwork. Hawkins' Webb struggled, nearly twisting an ankle on the third tire. The rope climb was where Garrett's lack of technique became obvious. He tried to muscle his way, up, arms doing all the work, legs barely engaged. By the time he reached the top, his arms were shaking. The bell rang, but the cost was visible. He descended slower than he'd climbed, grip failing. The female recruit used her legs properly, the technique Elena had demonstrated. She wasn't the fastest, but she was efficient, conserving energy for what came next. The barbed wire crawl claimed its victims. The power lifter recruit tried to power through, got his back caught on wire, had to reverse and adjust. Lost 15 seconds. Hawkins went too fast, scraped his back. Bloody had to slow down. Balance beam eliminated Foster Maddox completely. He made it 3 feet, wobbled, fell off, had to restart. Fell again. By his third attempt, the other recruits were already past the over-under barriers. Final times came in scattered. Garrett finished at 6 minutes 45 seconds. Not terrible, but far from impressive. Donovan hit 7:20. The female recruit crossed at 7:55, but her form had been consistently good throughout. Hawkins limped in at 8:10, his ankle clearly bothering him. The powerlifter managed 8:30. Foster Maddox finally finished at 9:40, his confidence shattered by the balance beam. Four more groups went through. Times ranged from 6 minutes to 9:50. A pattern emerged: the recruits with prior military experience did better, but not by as much as they'd expected. The ones who listened to Elena's demonstration and tried to replicate her technique improved faster than those who relied on raw athleticism. By 0800, all 24 recruits had completed the course. All 24 were exhausted, mud-covered, and significantly humbled. Thornton gathered them together. Average time 7 minutes 32 seconds. That's pathetic, but it's a baseline. We know where you're starting from. He gestured to Elena. Petty Officer Cross will now work with the 5 slowest times. The rest of you water break. Be back here in 15 minutes. Elena checked the recorded times, called out 5 names: Pierce, Morrison, Aldrich, Webb, Maddox, front and center. Donovan Pierce looked confused. His time wasn't actually in the bottom 5, but Elena had her reasons. A small recruit with serious eyes stepped forward, Brennan Morrison, who'd finished at 8:40. The tall female recruit approached Mackenzie Aldrich, whose 7:55 could be improved dramatically with some technical coaching. Hawkins Webb limped forward. Foster Maddox looked like he wanted to disappear. Elena led them back to the starting line. We're running this again, but this time you're staying with me, matching my pace, watching how I approach each obstacle. The goal isn't to beat your previous time. The goal is to learn better technique. She positioned them beside her, so my wall climb first. Pierce, you muscled it. Aldrich, your form was good, but you hesitated at the top. Webb, you're favoring that ankle. Morrison, you treated it like an enemy instead of a challenge. Maddox, you're stronger than you think. Elena demonstrated again this time, moving slower so they could see each step. Plant foot, drive with legs. Arms pull, but legs push. That's where the power comes from. Over the top, smoothly. Let gravity help on the way down. The 5 recruits tried again. Immediately, the improvement was visible. Donovan stopped trying to overpower the wall, used his legs properly. Mackenzie went over faster, no hesitation. Even Foster made it up, though his technique was still rough. At the rope climb, Elena stopped them. This is where most of you died. Watch my legs. She grabbed the rope, demonstrated the figure 4 lock slowly. Legs wrapped like this, they do 80% of the work. Hands are just for stability and guidance. Push with legs, slide, hands up. Lock, new position. Repeat. Morrison watched intently, his serious eyes tracking every movement. When Elena finished, he tried it himself. The difference was remarkable. He scaled the rope in half his previous time. That's it, Elena said. You just saved yourself 30 seconds and a lot of pain. They continued through each obstacle. Elena broke down the technique, identified individual weaknesses, provided specific corrections. At the barbed wire crawl, she taught them about weight distribution and rhythm. At the balance beam, she showed Foster how to find his center of gravity, how to trust his body's natural balance systems. By the time they finished the second run, all 5 had improved their times significantly. Morrison had shaved off a full minute. Mackenzie cut 40 seconds from her run. Even Foster made it through without falling off the beam. Master Chief Thornton clicked his stopwatch as they crossed the finish line. Better, much better. That's what training looks like. That's what improvement looks like. He dismissed them to join the others. As they walked away, Donovan Pierce hesitated, then turned back to Elena. Petty Officer Cross. Elena turned. Pierce. He struggled with the words, his earlier bravado completely gone. I wanted to apologize. For yesterday. In the mess hall. That was way out of line. I had no right to talk to you like that, no right to touch you. I'm sorry. Elena studied him for a moment. The apology seemed genuine. His shame was real. She nodded once. Apology accepted. Learn from it and move forward. That's all anyone can do. Donovan looked relieved. Thank you, Petty Officer. And thank you for the coaching just now, that rope technique that made a huge difference. That's why I'm here, to teach. Yes, ma'am. He started to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, you're the most impressive warrior I've ever seen. After he jogged away, Master Chief Thornton approached. You handled that well. He needed to apologize, and you didn't make him grovel. Good leadership. He's a kid, Master Chief. Kids make mistakes. The question is whether they learn from them. Thornton nodded slowly. True enough. He checked his watch. Classroom training starts at 1300. Tactical theory with me leading you observing. Then tomorrow we start hand-to-hand combat. That's where things get interesting. Looking forward to it, Master Chief. The afternoon classroom session revealed a different kind of challenge. Tactical theory required mental agility, strategic thinking, the ability to analyze terrain and enemy movements in logistics chains. Some recruits excelled here. Others struggled to think beyond the physical. Thornton stood at the front beside a large tactical map showing various terrain features. Mountains, valleys, rivers, roads. A compound marked in red. Scenario, he announced. You're a 6-person team inserted into hostile territory. Your mission is to reach this compound, gather intelligence, and extract without being detected. You have limited equipment, no support, and enemy patrols are active in the area. He pointed to Garrett. Rawlings, your team leader. Build your approach plan. Garrett stood, moved to the map. He studied it carefully, his earlier arrogance replaced by focused concentration. Finally, he spoke. The direct approach through this valley is probably being watched. I'd take the team along this ridgeline instead. Higher ground, better visibility, harder for patrols to spot us. Thornton nodded. Not bad. Aldrich, what's the flaw in Rawlings' plan? Mackenzie stood. Her finger traced the ridgeline, then moved to the compound. The ridgeline is exposed to observation from the compound itself. If they have lookouts on the walls or roof, they'll see us coming from a mile away. We're silhouetted against the scoia. Correct. Thornton turned to the smallest recruit, the serious one who'd improved so dramatically on the rope climb. Morrison, what else concerns you? Brennan Morrison stood, his voice less confident, but his thinking solid. Weather and timing, Master Chief. If we're in that draw here during heavy rain, we risk flash flooding, and we need to time our approach for low-light conditions. Early morning or dusk. Outstanding. Thornton looked pleased. You're learning to think about factors beyond just the map. He gestured to Elena. Petty Officer Cross, take us through infiltration techniques once the team reaches the compound. Elena moved to the map. This was her element. She'd done this for real in places where mistakes meant body bags. Assuming standard security measures, guards, possibly dogs, cameras, or sensors, your infiltration team should be no more than 3 people. 2 for entry, 1 for overwatch and security. The other 3 maintain a perimeter position to watch for patrols and provide early warning. She traced routes on the map with her finger. Entry team approaches from this blind spot Aldrich identified. Overwatch positions here with clear sight lines to the main access points. Perimeter security spreads out in a triangle formation, each person covering a different approach vector. Garrett raised his hand. Petty Officer, what if the entry team gets compromised inside the compound? Then the Overwatch and perimeter team face a hard choice. Do you go loud and extract them, compromising the entire mission? Or do you hold position and trust the entry team to handle it? That's where planning comes in. Contingencies, fallback positions, rally points. Every team member needs to know exactly what to do if things go sideways. Thornton jumped back in. And things always go sideways. Murphy's Law is the only law that matters in combat. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong at the worst possible time. Your job as operators is to have thought through as many scenarios as possible before you even start the mission. The session continued for 2 hours. Thornton and Elena working in tandem, throwing increasingly complex scenarios at the recruits. Some excelled. Mackenzie showed a natural gift for tactical analysis. Brennan had the kind of methodical thinking that caught details others missed. Garrett proved he could lead when he checked his ego and actually listened to input. Others struggled. Foster Maddox couldn't think beyond the obvious. The powerlifter recruit kept trying to solve tactical problems with brute force. When the session ended, several recruits stopped by Elena's position to ask follow-up questions. She answered each one patiently, recognizing the genuine desire to learn. This was the foundation, building trust through competence and accessibility. Garrett was the last to leave. He paused at the door, then turned back. Petty Officer, can I ask you something off the record? Elena gestured for him to continue. How do you know when you're ready for real combat, I mean? Training is one thing, but how do you know you won't freeze when bullets start flying for real? It was a good question, the kind that showed Garrett was thinking beyond his ego, now thinking about the actual responsibility of being a warrior. You don't know, Elena said honestly, until it happens. Training can prepare you, build muscle memory, create discipline. But combat is different. There's no safety net, no reset button. The truth is everyone's scared. The question is whether you can function through the fear. Garrett nodded slowly. Were you scared your first deployment? Elena thought back to her first firefight. Syrian border, convoy ambush. The way her hands had shaken for 10 seconds before training took over. Terrified. We were providing overwatch for a convoy moving through hostile territory. Intel said the route was clear, but Intel was wrong. We took contact from 3 different positions. For about 10 seconds I froze, completely locked up. Then my team leader's voice in my ear, muscle memory taking over. I did my job. She met his eyes. Afterwards, I threw up from the adrenaline dump. But during the fight, I functioned. Does it get easier? No. You just get better at managing it. The fear is always there. That's what keeps you sharp, keeps you from getting complacent. Thank you, petty officer. That's actually reassuring in a weird way. After he left, Elena stood alone in the empty classroom. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, casting long shadows across the tactical maps. Tomorrow they'd start hand-to-hand combat training. That's where egos would clash again, where the physical dominance that some recruits relied on would be challenged by technique and experience. She thought about Garrett's question, about fear and readiness and the moment when theory became reality. She told him the truth. You never knew until you were tested, but you could prepare. You could train until the movements became instinct. You could build the mental toughness to push through when your body wanted to quit. That's what the next 7 weeks were for. Preparation, testing, discovery. Elena gathered her materials and headed for the exit. Outside, the obstacle course sat empty in the fading light. Tomorrow, new recruits would struggle through it. The next day, more. Week after week until their bodies learned what their minds couldn't quite grasp, yet that limits were more negotiable than they seemed. She walked back to her quarters as the sun touched the horizon. Inside, she pulled out a notebook and began making notes on each recruit. Garrett Rawlings showed leadership potential when he could get past his assumptions. Donovan Pierce was coachable once his ego was checked. Mackenzie Aldrich had tactical intelligence that needed development. Brennan Morrison had heart that outweighed his small stature. 24 recruits, 24 different combinations of strength and weakness. Her job was to find what worked in each of them and bring it to the surface. 8 weeks. They'd already burned through one day. 55 more to go. Elena set down her pen and looked at the photo of her father on her small desk. He'd done this work too in his own way. Trained younger warriors, passed on knowledge, created the next generation. Now it was her turn. Not just to prove she belonged, but to create belonging for others. That's what Master Chief Thornton had said. That's what her father would have wanted. The real work had begun. The next morning arrived with fog rolling in from the Pacific, turning the training facility into something from a ghost story. Elena stood outside the combat training area at 0515, watching the mist curl around buildings and obstacle courses. Inside the padded room waited floor-to-ceiling mat safety equipment lined against one wall, the smell of rubber and old sweat that marked every place where warriors learned to hurt each other properly. Master Chief Thornton arrived carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Elena without a word. They stood together in the fog, drinking in silence, watching the first recruits materialize through the mist like soldiers emerging from smoke. Today's the day they learn something important, Thornton said finally. That size doesn't matter as much as they think it does. Some of them already learned that lesson, Master Chief. In a mess hall when they weren't expecting it. Today they'll be expecting it. That makes it harder. He took a long sip of coffee. Master Sergeant Torres is coming to help with demonstrations. You'll like him. Former Army Ranger expert in 6 different martial arts systems. He's forgotten more about hand-to-hand combat than most operators ever learn. Looking forward to it. One more thing. Thornton turned to face her directly. Rawlings is going to try to prove himself today. Not because he's learned nothing, but because he's learned enough to be dangerous. He'll want to show he can hang with you. Don't humiliate him, but don't go easy on him either. He needs to understand the gap between where he is and where he needs to be. Elena nodded. Understood. By 0530, all 24 recruits stood assembled in the combat training area. They wore standard PT gear, shorts, t-shirts, running shoes. Most looked nervous. Some looked eager. Garrett Rawlings looked focused in a way he hadn't been 3 days ago. The door opened and a figure entered that made even the largest recruits look small by comparison. Master Sergeant Frank Torres stood maybe 5'9", but he was built like a tank that had been compressed into human form. His arms were thick with muscle, his hands scarred from decades of training. He moved with the economical grace of someone who knew exactly how much force each situation required. "Morning, Petty Officer Cross," Torres said, his voice carrying a slight Texas drawl. "Master Chief says you're the real deal. Looking forward to working with you." "Likewise, Master Sergeant." Thornton stepped to the front. "Listen up. Today we begin hand-to-hand combat training. This is not sport. This is not competition. This is about learning to fight for your life when everything else has failed. When your weapon is gone, when you're injured, when the situation requires silent elimination of a threat." He gestured to Torres and Elena. Master Sergeant Torres and Petty Officer Cross are both experts in multiple combat systems. They're going to demonstrate basic techniques. Then you're going to practice them. Afterwards, we'll do controlled sparring to test your understanding. Questions? No hands went up. Good. Torres Marovich demonstrate the basic takedown sequence. Elena and Torres moved to the center of the mat. They faced each other in neutral stances. Torres began the explanation. Combat hand-to-hand isn't about fair fighting. It's about ending the threat as quickly and efficiently as possible. The first goal is usually to take your opponent to the ground where size advantages are minimized and technique dominates. Watch. Torres moved forward as if to grab Elena. She intercepted his reaching arm, her fingers finding the pressure point at his wrist with surgical precision. She rotated his arm inward, using his own momentum against him, and stepped inside his guard. Her other hand came up to his elbow, and she used the combined leverage to off-balance him. As Torres started to fall, completely controlled, fully cooperative, Elena swept his near leg with her right foot while maintaining control of his arm. He went down smooth, and she rode him to the mat, ending in a dominant position with her knee on his chest and his arm extended in a potential lock. "Control and position," Torres said, from the ground completely relaxed despite being in a submission hold. "She used my movement against me, didn't try to overpower me, just redirected my energy and took the dominant position. Marovich let me up." Elena released him and they both stood. Torres turned to the recruits. "That's a basic takedown against an aggressive opponent. Simple, effective, doesn't require superior strength. Now we're going to show you the same technique from several different angles and setups. Pay attention to details. Footwork, hand position, timing, all of it matters." For the next hour, Elena and Torres demonstrated techniques while Thornton circulated among the recruits, correcting their practice attempts. Elena moved between groups, showing them the fine points of wrist control, explaining weight distribution during throws, demonstrating how to transition from standing to ground positions. The recruits practiced on each other, their skill levels varying wildly. Some had wrestling backgrounds and picked up the techniques quickly. Others were clearly starting from zero, struggling with basic coordination. Elena spent extra time with those recruits, breaking down movements into smaller components until they could execute them properly. Brennan Morrison was one of those who struggled initially. He was small, barely 5'7", and his training partners outweighed him by 50 or 60 pounds. But he listened with absolute focus, asked intelligent questions, and adjusted his technique based on Elena's coaching. By the end of the hour, he was executing throws that surprised his larger partners. Mackenzie Aldrich had a natural gift for this. Her track background gave her excellent body awareness and balance. She picked up the sweeps and throws quickly, using leverage instead of trying to muscle her way through. Finally, Thornton called for attention. "All right, time to test your understanding. Controlled sparring, 3-minute rounds, moderate contact only. The goal is to execute techniques, not injure your partner. We'll rotate through different pairings." He paused, then looked directly at Elena. "Marovich, you are going to demonstrate first. Rawlings, you're up." Garrett stood, his face showing surprise and something else. Nervousness, maybe? Or anticipation? He moved to the center of the mat where Elena waited. They were roughly the same height, but Garrett probably had 40 pounds on her. In a pure strength competition, he'd have the advantage. But this wasn't about strength. Thornton positioned himself as referee. Remember controlled contact. Demonstrate technique. 3 minutes. Begin. Garrett circled cautiously, clearly uncertain how to approach this. Elena maintained a neutral stance, her hands up but not aggressive. She was letting him make the first move, testing his decision-making. Finally, Garrett committed. He shot forward for a double-leg takedown, trying to use his wrestling background. Good choice against most opponents. But Elena had seen it coming from his stance setup, from the way his weight shifted before he moved. She sprawled backwards, her legs shooting out behind her, her weight dropping onto Garrett's shoulders. At the same time, her hands found his head, and she rotated, using leverage to turn him sideways. His momentum carried him past her and onto the mat. Before he could recover, Elena had transitioned to his back, her legs hooking inside his thighs, her arms starting to work for a choke position. "Stop," Thornton called. "Reset. Reeves, what happened?" Garrett pushed himself up, breathing hard, more from surprise than exertion. "She read my setup, sprawled before I could get deep on the legs, used my momentum against me." "Correct. You telegraphed your intention. Your stance changed right before you shot. In a real fight, that split second of warning is enough for a skilled opponent to counter. Try again. This time mix up your attacks. Make her guess." They reset. This time Garrett was more careful. He feinted with a jab, testing her reactions. Elena slipped the punch easily, not countering, just showing she could defend. Garrett tried another angle, coming in with a combination of strikes before attempting a clinch. Better tactics. Elena defended the strikes and engaged the clinch. For a few seconds, they grappled for position, Garrett trying to use his strength to drive her backwards. But Elena stayed low, maintained her base, and suddenly reversed him with a hip throw that looked effortless but required perfect timing. Garrett landed on his back again. Elena immediately moved to mount position, demonstrating control. "Stop," Thornton said. "Better Rawlings, you're learning. Marovich, excellent hip throw, clean execution." Everyone see how she used his forward pressure against him. Didn't try to stop his movement, just redirected it. They went 2 more rounds. Each time, Elena demonstrated different techniques and counters. By the end, Garrett was exhausted, but had clearly learned a great deal. More importantly, his respect for Elena's skills was now completely solidified. There was no doubt, no hidden resentment, just acknowledgement that she was operating at a different level. Thornton called up other recruits to spar with Elena. Mackenzie lasted the longest, using her speed and flexibility to avoid getting taken down for almost 90 seconds before Elena swept her legs and secured a submission. Donovan Pierce went 2 rounds and ended up tapping out to an arm lock, but he took the lesson with good humor. Even Foster Maddox, who'd struggled on the balance beam, showed heart by never giving up despite being thoroughly outclassed. After several demonstration rounds, Thornton had the recruits spar with each other, while he, Torres, and Elena circulated to provide coaching. Elena watched carefully, identifying natural fighters and those who would need extensive work. She noticed Garrett helping Brennan Morrison with his stance, showing him a correction Elena had demonstrated earlier. That was good leadership emerging, taking knowledge and passing it on. The training session ran 4 hours with periodic breaks for water and recovery. By the end, every recruit was exhausted, bruised, and significantly more educated in hand-to-hand combat. As they filed out, Torres approached Elena. "You're damn good, Marovich. Seriously impressive. I've trained with a lot of special operations folks over the years, and you're top tier. Your technique is clean, your transitions are smooth, and you've clearly spent time against bigger, stronger opponents. You know all the tricks for dealing with size disadvantages." "Thank you, Master Sergeant. I've had good teachers and a lot of practice." Torres grinned. "I bet. Listen, if you ever want to do some advanced training sessions, just the instructors, let me know. I'd love to roll with you when we're both going full speed. See what tricks you've got that I haven't seen." "I'd be happy to, Master Sergeant." After Torres left, Thornton approached with a satisfied expression. "Outstanding work today, Marovich. You demonstrated technique clearly, you coached effectively, and you earned the recruits' respect without humiliating them. That's exactly what this program needs." "Thank you, Master Chief. The recruits are learning fast. Some of them have real potential." "They do, and you're bringing it out of them." Thornton paused, studying her face. "That's the mark of a good instructor. Walk with me. There's something we need to discuss. They left the training area and headed across the base. The fog had burned off, leaving the afternoon bright and clear. Thornton led her to his office, closed the door, and gestured for her to sit. "What I'm about to tell you stays between us for now," he said, settling into his chair. "I'm retiring at the end of this training cycle." Elena felt something shift in her chest. "Master Chief, let me finish. I've been doing this for 42 years. Enlisted in 1982, saw the Cold War from the inside, watched the world change more times than I can count. I'm 62 years old and I'm tired, Cross. Not physically. Mentally, I'm tired of fighting the same battles, tired of proving the same things over and over." He leaned forward. "But I'm not leaving this program in the hands of just anyone. I've recommended you as the next senior instructor. The position comes with a promotion to Chief Petty Officer and command authority over the entire training pipeline." Elena's mind raced. Senior instructor, the top position in the program. The person who shaped how the next generation of warriors were trained. "Master Chief, I'm honored, but nothing, you've earned it. 3 combat deployments, Silver Star, the respect of every operator who's worked with you, and more importantly, you've got something that can't be taught. You understand that leadership isn't about being the toughest person in the room. It's about making everyone else tougher." Thornton stood, moved to the window. "There's a catch, though. Command needs to see you can lead a program, not just a training session. They're sending observers for the field exercise in week 6, 72 hours of realistic combat scenarios. If your recruits perform exceptionally, you get the job. If they fail spectacularly, the whole program gets shut down and we all get reassigned." The weight of it settled on Elena's shoulders like combat gear. Not just her future, not just the recruits' futures, the entire program. "No pressure," she said quietly. Thornton smiled without humor. "No pressure at all. Just your career, 24 recruits' futures, and the legacy of 40 years of special operations training, riding on 3 days in the desert." He turned back to face her. "But I have faith in you, Cross. Your father would too. James Cross was the kind of warrior who made everyone around him better. I see that same quality in you. Now you just need to prove it to the brass." Elena stood. "I won't let you down, Master Chief. I know you won't. Now get out of here. We've got 4 more weeks before the field exercise, and those recruits need a lot more work before they're ready." The next 4 weeks blurred together in a relentless cycle of training. Obstacle course runs that gradually saw times dropping across the board. Hand-to-hand combat sessions where techniques started to replace raw aggression. Classroom tactical training that revealed which recruits could think strategically under pressure. Weapons qualifications on the firing range. Underwater stress drills. Night navigation exercises. Medical trauma training. Through it all, Elena watched the recruits transform. Garrett Rawlings evolved from an arrogant football star into someone who actually listened, who sought input from teammates, who led by example instead of expectation. Donovan Pierce became one of the most coachable recruits, constantly asking questions and implementing feedback. Mackenzie Aldrich emerged as a natural tactical thinker, often seeing solutions that others missed. Brennan Morrison proved that heart could compensate for size, never quitting, despite being the smallest recruit in the group. But the most significant change came in week 4, after a particularly brutal 18-hour training day. Elena was heading back to her quarters when she heard footsteps behind her. "Petty Officer Cross, can I talk to you for a minute?" She turned. Garrett Rawlings stood in the fading light, looking uncertain in a way he never had before. "What is it, Rawlings?" "I need to tell you something about why I'm here." He took a breath. "My older brother Caleb died in SEAL training 5 years ago. Hell Week. Underwater stress drill. His regulator failed and he panicked. By the time they pulled him out, it was too late." Elena felt her chest tighten. She'd heard about that incident. Equipment malfunction. Tragic but not uncommon in training that pushed human limits. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said quietly. "I came here thinking," Garrett struggled with the words, "I thought maybe if they were lowering standards, cutting corners, to push people through faster, maybe that's why Caleb died. Like the system had failed him, and if I could prove that I could make sense of it somehow." He looked directly at her. "But watching you these past 4 weeks, learning from you, You're the toughest warrior I've ever seen, and you're teaching us things Caleb never got taught. Better techniques, smarter tactics, more efficient ways to accomplish the mission." Elena waited, sensing there was more. "I've been dishonoring his memory," Garrett said, his voice breaking slightly, "by being angry at the wrong things, by trying to prove the system was broken instead of honoring what he was trying to become. Caleb wanted to be a SEAL because he believed in something bigger than himself, and I've been here for all the wrong reasons." Elena studied him for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice carrying the weight of her own losses. "I had a spotter in Afghanistan, Marcus Holloway, best friend I ever had. He saved my life twice in firefights. Third time sniper round came in from a building we'd already cleared. Marcus saw the shot developing, pushed me aside, took the bullet himself. Died in my arms while I tried to stop the bleeding." Garrett's face showed the recognition of shared grief. "I'm here because Marcus would want me passing on what he taught me," Elena continued, "not proving myself, not validating my own worth, teaching, making sure the next generation has the skills and knowledge to survive when everything goes to hell. Who carries Caleb's legacy, Paulings? You do. What are you teaching in his name?" Garrett stood silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was steady. "I want to learn, really learn, whatever you're willing to teach. I want to become the warrior Caleb believed he could be. I want to honor his memory by being excellent at this, not bitter about it. Then show up tomorrow ready to work. Lead your teammates. Help the ones who are struggling. Be the kind of operator your brother would have been proud to serve with." "Yes, ma'am, I will." After he left, Elena stood alone in the gathering darkness. Somewhere across the base, 23 other recruits were dealing with their own struggles, their own reasons for being here. Her job was to help them find meaning in the pain, purpose in the challenge. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Week 5 brought weapons qualifications that separated the naturally gifted from those who had to work for it. Garrett scored expert marksman with both pistol and rifle, his football-trained hand-eye coordination translating perfectly to sight picture and trigger control. Mackenzie surprised everyone by outscoring half the male recruits on stress fire drills. Brennan Morrison, despite his small frame, showed the kind of steady breathing control that made him a natural with precision shooting. Underwater stress drills nearly broke Foster Maddox. 30 feet down, regulator removed, he panicked. Elena watched through the observation window as he clawed for the surface. But Garrett was there, swimming down, forcing eye contact, hand signals, reminding him, slow, exhale, emergency ascend procedure, don't hold your breath. Foster made it up controlled. Barely. But he made it. That night, Elena found Garrett running the obstacle course alone in the darkness, pushing himself past exhaustion. She didn't interrupt, just watched from the shadows as he fell off the balance beam, cursed quietly, and climbed back on. That was the warrior his brother would have recognized. The anonymous complaints hung over everything. Elena noticed Commander Phillips, a senior instructor with 30 years in special operations, observing her training sessions from a distance, tablet in hand, face impassive. Thornton had warned her, "Phillips thinks women are a political experiment. He's documenting everything, waiting for you to fail." But Elena didn't change her methods. She taught what worked, pushed where pushing mattered, and watched her recruits become warriors who could function when everything went wrong. By week 6, obstacle course times had dropped dramatically. Garrett hit 5 minutes flat. Mackenzie broke 6:15. Even Foster Maddox, who'd fallen off the balance beam 6 times that first day, crossed at 7:05 with perfect form. They were ready, or as ready as 8 weeks could make them. 72 hours, he announced. Field training exercise. You will infiltrate a fortified compound, rescue 2 hostages, and extract to a rally point. Petty Officer Cross will lead a 12-person opposition force consisting of experienced operators. You will have limited equipment, no external support, in a hostile environment. He paused. Let that sink in. Special Operations Command will observe this exercise. They're deciding the future of this program. Succeed or fail as a team. Is that clear? Yes, Master Chief. Thornton looked at Garrett. Rawlings, you're team leader. The announcement surprised everyone, including Garrett, but he stepped forward without hesitation. Aye, Master Chief. After the briefing, Thornton pulled Elena aside. This is it. 3 days that determine everything. I've given Rawlings the leadership role because he's changed the most. If he succeeds, it validates everything you have taught them. If he fails, at least, we'll know we gave him every chance. He won't fail, Elena said. He's ready. I hope you're right, because there's something I haven't told you yet. Thornton's face was grave. The reason Command is so interested in this exercise is that they've received complaints. Anonymous reports that you're too soft on recruits, that you're not maintaining standards, that your methods are unproven. Elena felt cold anger settle in her gut. Who filed the complaints? Anonymous means I can't prove it, but I have suspicions. One of the senior staff who thinks women have no place in special operations training. He's been making noise for years. Thornton met her eyes. If this exercise goes badly, those complaints will have ammunition. Command will use it as justification to restructure the program, remove you from consideration for senior instructor, and possibly end your career as an instructor altogether. The stakes had just gotten higher. Understood, Master Chief. Good. Now go turn those recruits into warriors. The field exercise began at 0400 on a Monday morning. The recruits deployed into a remote training area 50 miles east of the base, high desert terrain, harsh and unforgiving. The compound was a realistic mock-up, concrete walls, guard towers, multiple rooms, limited entry points. Elena positioned her 12-person opposition force with professional military precision, 3 snipers on elevated overwatch positions, 4 guards inside the compound perimeter, 5 mobile patrol elements covering approach roads. The 2 hostages, actually evaluators playing captured civilians, were secured in a back room of the main structure. Master Chief Thornton and 3 command observers watched from the Tactical Operations Center, monitoring radio traffic and tracking both sides' movements. The first 12 hours passed in tense waiting. Garrett led his team through careful reconnaissance, gathering intelligence on patrol patterns, sight lines, guard rotations. Smart tactics, patient tactics. Elena watched through her off-for-coordination net, impressed by his methodical approach. Hour 14. Nightfall. Garrett launched his first assault. His team approached from the eastern perimeter using darkness and terrain as concealment. They moved in a proper tactical formation using hand signals, maintaining discipline. Elena watched them through night vision equipment, tracking their progress. At 80 meters from the compound, one of her mobile patrol elements spotted them. Simulated gunfire erupted, blank rounds creating realistic noise evaluators, tracking supposed hits based on positioning and exposure. The engagement was brief but intense. Evaluators called casualties on both sides. 4 of Garabitz's recruits were marked as killed, including Donovan Pierce, who'd been walking point. Garrett made the right call, broke contact, and withdrew his remaining forces to regroup. Back at their staging area, Garrett gathered his remaining 20 recruits. Through the surveillance feeds, Elena heard him speak. We got spotted too early. They had overwatch we didn't identify. What did we miss? No blame, no anger, just tactical analysis. Elena smiled slightly. He really had learned. Mackenzie Aldrich spoke up. The compound has 3 levels. We scouted the ground level and first floor, but if they have observers on the roof with night vision, we'd never see them until it was too late. Good catch, Garrett said. Next approach, we need to account for elevated observation. They planned for 6 hours, rested 8, then launched assault number 2 at hour 24. This time, Garrett used a different tactic, diversionary assault. Brennan Morrison led 8 recruits in a noisy frontal attack on the compound's main gate, drawing Elena's for attention to that position. Meanwhile, Garrett led 6 others in a flanking approach from the previously identified blind side. Better tactics, better coordination. Elena adjusted her OPFOR response realistically, pulling forces toward the diversion while maintaining some security on the flanks. The firefight was more intense this time. Brennan's team laid down aggressive, suppressing fire blanks and simulated explosions, creating chaos. Garrett's flanking team got within 30 meters of the compound before being detected. Another fierce engagement. Evaluators called more casualties. Garrett lost 3 more recruits. Elena's OPFOR took losses too, 2 of her operators marked as killed. But the assault ultimately failed. Garrett couldn't breach the compound defenses with his reduced force. He withdrew again, now down to 13 effective operators from his original 24 hour 36. Garrett called his remaining team together. Elena listened through the surveillance net. We're getting shredded doing frontal assaults, Garrett admitted. Pierce is gone, Webb is gone, half our force is casualties. We need a completely different approach. Mackenzie spoke up. Remember week 3, Petty Officer Cross taught us about asymmetric tactics. When the enemy is stronger, you don't fight their fight, you change the game. What are you thinking? Small infiltration team, while we run maximum diversion. Make them commit everything to one side, then sneak in the other. Garrett looked at Brennan Morrison, whose diversion team had performed well. Morrison, can you hold their attention for 15 minutes? Make them think you're the main assault. Brennan nodded seriously. We'll make them believe it, team leader. Then that's our play. Morrison, take 8 people. Hit the front gate hard and loud. Aldrich, you're with me along with Webb and Maddox. 4-person infiltration team. We get the hostages while they're focused on Morrison. Hour 48, the final assault began. Morrison's team attacked the compound's front gate with everything they had. Simulated grenades, concentrated fire, aggressive movement. They made it look like a full-scale assault committing their apparent full strength. Elena watched her offer respond exactly as they should, 4 operators shifting to counter the threat, assuming this was the main attack. But she also watched Garrett's infiltration team moving through the darkness on the compound's blind side. They used terrain perfectly, stayed low, moved with patience. These weren't the same recruits who'd started training 8 weeks ago. They reached a side entry point that Mackenzie had identified during reconnaissance. Hawkins Webb, the lanky recruit who'd struggled initially, used techniques learned in week 5 to breach the lock. The 4-person team entered the compound quietly. Inside, they cleared rooms with methodical precision. The training had taken hold. They moved like operators, not recruits. When they located the hostage room, Garrett posted security while Mackenzie and Foster secured the 2 evaluators. We're U.S. military, Garrett whispered to the hostages. Stay quiet. We're getting you out. But extraction was where everything could fall apart. Morrison's diversion team was pinned down, taking heavy simulated fire. Elena's offer was now aware of the infiltration team inside the compound. The tactical situation was deteriorating fast. Through the radio net, Elena heard Garrett make his decision. Morrison, how long can you hold? Maybe 2 minutes, team leader. They're overrunning our position. Aldrich, take Webb and Maddox. Get the hostages to the primary rally point. That's mission priority. What about you, Mom? I'm going back for Morrison. There was a pause. Then Mackenzie's voice, steady and clear. Acknowledged, good hunting, team leader. Garrett split his already small force, sent 3 people plus the hostages toward extraction while he went back into the firefight alone to extract Morrison's pinned-down team. Elena watched it unfold with a mixture of professional interest and personal pride. This was the impossible choice. Mission success versus teammates' lives. Most team leaders would take the safe option, complete the primary mission, accept the casualties. Garrett was attempting to save everyone. Through her command net, Elena made a decision. She ordered her OPFOR to respond realistically, but not impossibly. This was a teaching moment. The recruits had earned the chance to succeed or fail on their own merits. Garrett reached Morrison's position and found 4 survivors from the original 8. Together, they fought a controlled withdrawal under heavy fire. Evaluators called Garrett as wounded leg injuries, still mobile. 2 more recruits marked as killed. But Garrett got Morrison and 2 others to a secondary rally point. Meanwhile, Mackenzie's team successfully delivered the hostages to the primary extraction location. Hour 72, exercise complete. Final casualty count. 11 recruits killed in action, but both hostages rescued, and 7 of Morrison's team extracted despite being pinned down in what should have been a death trap. Master Chief Thornton called everyone to the TOC for after-action review. The recruits assembled exhausted, mud-covered, some visibly limping. The command observers sat in the back faces, unreadable tablets in hand. Thornton stood at the front. Mission objective was to rescue 2 hostages. Team leader Rawlings not only rescued the hostages, he also extracted 7 teammates who were pinned down and facing elimination. That exceeds mission parameters. He looked at Garrett directly. You made an impossible choice. Mission success versus teammates' lives. Most leaders would have taken the safe option. You found a third way. That's not just leadership. That's warrior thinking. Thornton's voice softened slightly. Your brother Caleb would be proud. You didn't honor his memory by being bitter or proving the system failed. You honored him by becoming the warrior he wanted to be. Garrett's face showed emotion he couldn't quite control. Thornton turned to Mackenzie. Aldrich, you provided the tactical solution that made success possible. Asymmetric thinking that changed the game. Then to Brennan Morrison. Morrison, your diversion team held under impossible circumstances. You accepted near-certain casualties to give your teammates a chance. That's the definition of courage. Finally, Thornton looked at Elena. Petty Officer Cross, your OPFOR was the toughest opponent these recruits will face until real combat. More importantly, every lesson you taught over 8 weeks showed up in their performance under fire. He paused, then addressed everyone. I have an announcement. I'm retiring effective end of this training cycle. I've recommended Petty Officer Cross as the next senior instructor with promotion to Chief Petty Officer. A murmur ran through the assembled recruits. One of the command observers stood, a commander with an impressive rack of ribbons and the bearing of someone who'd spent decades making hard decisions. Master Chief Thornton is correct. We've observed this training cycle with interest. We've reviewed the complaints filed against Petty Officer Cross, and we've now seen the results. He looked directly at Elena. The complaints suggested you were too soft, that you weren't maintaining standards, that your methods were unproven. This exercise proves otherwise. These recruits performed at a level that exceeds what we typically see from programs with twice the funding and 3 times the personnel. The commander smiled slightly. Petty Officer Cross, you are confirmed as senior instructor effective immediately with promotion to Chief Petty Officer. Congratulations. The recruits erupted in applause. Garrett led the standing ovation, joined immediately by every recruit in the room. 2 weeks later, graduation ceremony. All 24 recruits stood in formation wearing their dress uniforms. They'd made it 8 weeks of hell and they'd survived. Master Chief Thornton stood at the podium for his final address. I've served this nation for 42 years. I've seen this military transform in ways I couldn't have imagined when I enlisted in 1982. Equipment changed. Tactics evolved. But one thing remained constant. Warriors are made by learning from those who walk before them. He looked at Elena. Chief Petty Officer Cross represents the next generation of military leadership. She earned her place through blood and sacrifice, through skill and courage. And now she earns her place as a teacher, shaping warriors who will carry our legacy forward. Thornton pulled something from his pocket, his personal sealed trident, the one he'd earned on his first deployment 40 years ago, tarnished with age but still solid. This trident has been with me through 4 decades of service, Cold War operations that are still classified, Desert Storm, countless missions in places the public never heard about. Your father gave me something in Grenada, Chief Cross. He gave me hope that good men survive by staying sharp, by never stopping their training, by passing knowledge to the next generation. He held out the trident. I'm giving this to you now, not as a gift, but as a responsibility. Your mission is to give that same hope to every warrior who comes through this program. Make them better than we were. Make them ready for challenges we can't imagine. Elena accepted the trident, her throat tight. I won't let you down, Master Chief. I know you won't. That's why I chose you. After the ceremony, as recruits celebrated and families took photos, Garrett approached Elena. Chief Cross, I have a request. I've been accepted to advanced SEAL training. I want to come back after serve as an assistant instructor under you, if you'll have me. Elena studied him. 8 weeks ago, he'd been an arrogant kid trying to intimidate her in a mess hall. Now he stood before her as a warrior, asking to serve, to teach, to pass on what he'd learned. I'd be honored to have you on the instructor cadre. Rawlings. Mackenzie approached next. Chief, I'm submitting my application for full SEAL candidacy. I'd like to request you as my official mentor. You've got it, Aldrich. You're going to make an outstanding operator. One by one, the recruits came, some to say thank you, others to ask for guidance on their next assignments. All of them changed from who they'd been 8 weeks ago. As the sun set over the training facility, Elena stood alone for a moment, holding Master Chief Thornton's trident. She thought about her father, about Marcus Holloway, about Bull Thornton and the 42 years of service he'd given, about the 24 recruits who'd just graduated. Legacy wasn't about being the toughest warrior. It was about creating warriors who would be tougher, smarter, and better prepared than you were. That's what her father had done. what Marcus would have wanted, what Bull had spent 4 decades building. Now it was her turn. Elena walked back toward her office, the senior instructor's office now. Inside, there was work to be done. Next training cycle started in 2 weeks. 30 new recruits who would arrive thinking they knew what they were getting into. She smiled. They had no idea. But they would learn, just like Garrett and his class had learned. Just like every class would learn. Because Elena Cross had found her mission. Not in combat zones or classified operations, not in proving herself to skeptics or shattering records. Her mission was here, creating the next generation of warriors, passing on the legacy of everyone who'd come before, making sure that when these recruits faced their own impossible moments, they'd have the skills and knowledge and mental toughness to survive. 6 months later, Elena stood at the starting line of the obstacle course, 30 new recruits watching with varying degrees of confidence and skepticism. Some looked nervous, others cocky. All of them thought they understood what the next 8 weeks would demand. She'd worn that same look once. Master Chief Thornton stood off to the side, retired now, but visiting as he'd promised. Beside him, Garrett Rawlings wore the assistant instructor insignia, back from advanced SEAL training, with the same focus he had brought to that final field exercise. Mackenzie Aldrich stood in recruit formation. She'd volunteered for full BODIAS, the first woman from this program to attempt SEAL candidacy. Chief Cross, one of the new recruits, called out, his voice carrying that particular brand of masculine certainty. "What's the course record?" Elena smiled slightly. She'd heard this question before. 4 minutes and 18 seconds, she said. "Set 30 years ago." The recruit smirked, probably thought he could beat it, probably thought his high school track times meant something here. "My personal best," Elena continued, "is 3 minutes 46 seconds. The smirk died. "Now watch how it's done." Thornton raised his stopwatch. "On my mark, Chief. 3, 2, 1, go." Elena exploded forward. The new recruits watched in stunned silence as she flowed through the course over the wall in under 3 seconds, through the tires without breaking rhythm, up the rope using legs, not arms, under the wire like water across the beam, without hesitation through the barriers like they weren't there. She crossed the finish line at 3 minutes 44 seconds, 2 seconds faster than her previous best. The recruits stared. The cocky one's mouth hung open slightly. Garrett stepped forward, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd learned these lessons the hard way. "That's your standard. That's what Chief Cross expects. Not because she's trying to break you, because she's trying to build you into something that can survive when everything goes wrong." He paused, met the eyes of several recruits. "I know, because I stood where you're standing 6 months ago. I thought I knew what a warrior looked like. I was wrong. She taught me. Now we're going to teach you." Elena caught Thornton's eye. The old warrior nodded, one satisfaction in his storm cloud eyes. Marcus Holloway would have approved, her father would have been proud. And somewhere Caleb Rawlings was watching his brother become the instructor their family had lost. The legacy continued.